that kind of openness, I think, is really what I'm after. Because especially with technology, it's very easy to hide. And whether that's just by yourself in a room or just private little sin struggles or temptations, I want my kids to view those as open things that they need to talk about, they can talk about, that there will be forgiveness for, rather than something where their default instinct is to hide.
Hey guys, welcome to the Growing Fathers podcast. I'm John Dalrymple here with two Christophers here today, Christopher Shaw and Kris Pennington. Guys, all we need is John Pate, and then we'd have our 4 original Growing Fathers from when we started the blog back in 2020. That's a long time ago.
Time flies when you're having fun.
And I think that my oldest was only like 5 years old, which is kind of, I don't know, shocking in some ways. Like, why were we starting a blog when I was just such a young parent? But that's the whole point here, is that we're growing as dads. And I think we've grown a lot in the last 5 years together. It's been fun. This is the Growing Fathers podcast, and we're just a few growing dads trying to help other Christian dads become more like Jesus and apply the Bible to parenting for the strengthening of families and churches to the glory of God. Pennington, you were a big part of making Growing Fathers happen there 5 years ago, and have continued to be an important part along the way, both with your writing and with your coding. You've rebuilt our website multiple times. Before we get into talking about technology in the home, the focus of today's episode, tell everyone about yourself. Tell us about your family and about your relationship with technology over the years.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me on. It's nice to be in the same room again, together, virtually. But yeah, no, my wife and I, we've been married almost 15 years. We've got a 9, 7, and 5-year-old, 2 girls and a boy, and which is hard to believe, but really enjoying life in kind of rural, mountainous Utah. Christopher actually got to hang out with his family just not too long ago.
It was awesome.
A month ago or so.
We got rained out on the 4th of July.
Yeah, the first time I've ever gotten that in Utah, but I was glad I had someone to share it with. And we lost power. It was a whole saga. But yeah, we've been here since 2016, and so I help at the church as kind of a part-time pastor, and then I also work in the development space as well. And a lot of that's just kind of happened as life has happened. There were needs for people to do things like build websites, and so God gave me both the time and capacity to kind of take that on, and that grew into a real love, and I've continued to really enjoy it. Ironically, like my older brother was always the technology guy in our home, so I never considered myself for that role ever, and so I've kind of fallen into it accidentally, but now it gives me good connection with him, and it's been neat to see God use it, especially for ministry over the years, whether that's with local nonprofits or church or Growing Fathers. So it's been neat to use technology, especially the kind of the coding side of stuff, for the church and for the gospel. So just glad to be a part of it, and it's been cool to grow this together with you all.
Yeah, it's been a blast. We are going to, for the sake of time, we're going to skip parenting highlights and lowlights, what we usually start with, and we're just going to jump into our really massive topic today of technology, and we're not going to be able to plumb the depths. We're not going to be able to talk all that we want with this topic, but we want to address how to navigate pitfalls and establish some guiding principles for the use of technology in the home. This is a topic, frankly, that my wife and I have been increasingly concerned about, I guess, as our children kind of get older and interact with technology more and more. So Pennington, you're in the introduction to your article, How to Parent Technology, you explain how it can be tempting to think of today's technology as kind of neutral, like a neutral tool, like a hammer. But you note, quote, hammers aren't driven by constantly tweaked algorithms, data analysis, advertisers, and clickbait. Behind today's tech sit real human hearts trying to influence our thoughts, beliefs, and actions. And that's a scary thought, especially considering the agenda that those people have. So what is that direction? What is that influence? How do you think technology is influencing our thoughts, beliefs, and actions today, both as parents and for our kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of things in our world, we live in them so much it's easy to forget that. So I think a lot of that kind of opening section was just a reminder to be cognizant of that, to recognize that there are influences behind it. And of course, they're not always all bad. Sometimes they're very moral. Like, it depends which YouTube rabbit hole you fall down. But I think often like it's just the world's agenda. And even if that's a morality without God, it's also without God. And I think often we don't give thought to how we're being shaped. And it's a scary thought to think that the most powerful companies in the world today with the most money, the most influence, their whole job is to get your attention and keep it. That is like it's been called the new oil, people's attention. And the attention economy is really, it drives a lot of the world. That can be, of course, through social media, but just the internet at large. I wrote this, I think, in 2022 before the entrance of a lot of LLMs on the main, scene, ChatGPT and others. But those are also fed off of kind of the collective values of the world. So it's more about being cognizant. I'm not suggesting we put our heads in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist. You really can't live actively as a functioning adult without some connection to technology today, since so much is built on it. But you have to do so thoughtfully. And if you aren't thoughtful, you will be driven by whatever those influences are.
Yeah. In your article, before giving 4 kind of starting principles for navigating the use of tech in the home, you give 2 common pitfalls. Can you explain those to us?
Yeah, I mentioned the first one. Our biggest problems are outside of us. Yeah. And that in some ways kind of ties into this other one we just mentioned, because it's easy to say like, oh, all these bad people out there and I'm so innocent and good and all my kids are perfect. And like, if it wasn't for them, then and I'm sure you all have seen this, especially working with teenagers. That's often how parents of teens think. If I just keep my kids away from the bad kids at school or the bad movies or the bad music, then my kids are kind of pure and perfect. And that's a really dangerous way to think. James 1:14 talks about that sin ultimately comes from within, and that desire to do wrong comes from within. The reason the world, the flesh, the devil are so powerful is because our heart's magnetized to sin. And so they attach to something that's already there. They're not putting sin there, and they're just attaching to what our hearts already want. And so I think that's really important. And I don't know if you all have seen that in your own parenting, like the temptation to think like, oh, my kids are good, it's everyone else who's bad. Or if you've seen that with parenting or helping parents of teens as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it. Yeah.
Some other parents just don't really think they need to have a strategy at all. That's the second pitfall that you're talking about. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, like this maybe ties back in again to that first and kind of doubles down on it, which is that it's easy to just simply give your kids an iPad or whatever. And usually that's to give yourself a little time so you don't have to spend so much time interacting with them or whatever it happens to be, and not really give thought to it and just assume like they'll be fine. That kind of strategy today especially is just it's just really dangerous. There's no parent who can kind of surrender that to technology in a wise way. I might just hit that again because I didn't say anything useful.
Well, I think a lot of parents, even those that say, I don't need a strategy, they do have a strategy and that's it.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, often the strategy is simply that I think it's easy to just surrender that strategy to the technology and let it kind of drive whatever your kids want to do and assume that they'll be fine. And if they get in trouble, you'll figure out about it. Or sometimes it's easy to throw a quick internet filter and assume that everything's okay. But you need to be guiding your kids in more than just, are they accessing something inappropriate? It's how they think about technology, how it guides them, how you find them going down their own little YouTube rabbit holes or whatever else they end up doing. The social aspect online, a lot of gaming is really connected to other people, but often that's totally without any parental involvement. So a strategy can't be, my kids get to choose this strategy. If we're going to parent, we need to parent. And that includes technology.
Yeah, and if I can just riff on that a little bit, I think that we can even be well-intentioned and fall into that pitfall. We can say, well, I'm just going to focus on my kids' hearts, which clearly that's where it starts, right? I mean, it starts with focusing on the heart. Out of the heart proceeds all of these different sins, Jesus said, and out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, and keep your heart without diligence, and because out of it are the streams of life. But at the same time, I think there's maybe our generation has a bias against specific rules. I don't know, Kris or John, if you've noticed that, but I don't know if our parents had too many rules or something like that. But I know, like, for instance, even John, when you and I get together for accountability, one way that you really help me is when I've confessed some kind of sin or temptation to you, you'll ask me the question, okay, what are we going to do about that, Christopher? And you're just pushing me towards some kind of a specific strategy, I guess, rule, that I would make in order to help myself in that area. So if it could be as simple as, I'm not going to eat sugar at work, or I think you were at one point moving your phone charger away from your bed. So there's certain things they say, no, I'm going to put this thing in place in my life to protect myself in this area. And I think that sometimes parents are just a little bit naive or idealistic. Like, I'm just going to give my child a 5-minute or 10-minute talk about, why it's important to make sure you're using your technology wisely. And then I'm going to hand him the unfiltered iPad. And then, now it's covered. And I think that's a bad strategy, and it's naive.
Well, let's just assume that dads that are jumping on this podcast, in this episode in particular, are acknowledging that the heart is out of the heart flows these things, and that they need a strategy to put in place, but they just don't know where to start. And so, Pennington, your article provides some different principles for thinking about technology. And you start not with all the specifics, although you get there. You start by kind of laying a foundation for a healthy home where kids and parents alike will handle technology well. And your first point is to create a home full of confession and forgiveness, which doesn't seem like it's talking about technology at all. And yet that's really central for that, laying that foundation, a culture there in which you could have technology in a healthy way. So why start with that point?
Yeah, I mean, I know most dads are, and moms are, they want homes that are centered on God. And most Christian dads and moms, they want that. It's just a matter of priority or time. And whether it's setting up things or responding to the way our kids, wrongly use technology, a lot of times it's hard to kind of create a consistent atmosphere where, it'll always go the certain way, no matter what safeguards you put in place, whatever filters you put on. Kids are going to find things that they shouldn't have found, or they're going to use technology in wrong ways. And I think a lot of times the default response for all of us is to hide. And if your kids' default response with technology is to hide, they can hide for years and no one ever knows. I don't know about you all, but we've had issues with all of our kids at one time or the other with some kind of temptation in kind of the sexual exploration area. And a lot of times it's just curiosity or something like that. But one of the things we've always tried to do is to say, like, hey, if something's going on, let's talk about it and let's work through it. And so our kids will very openly talk to us about, like, hey, I did this. And we're like, okay, well, why? And, and that kind of openness, I think, is really what I'm after. Because especially with technology, it's very easy to hide. And whether that's just by yourself in a room or just private little sin struggles or temptations, I want my kids to view those as open things that they need to talk about, they can talk about, that there will be forgiveness for, rather than something where their default instinct is to hide.
You mentioned in that point about confession and forgiveness. And I realize that for some kids, it may just be curiosity, but as they get older, there'll be an intentional succumbing to sin, succumbing to temptation. And so how have you talked with either your kids or with teens about, well, I guess first of all, it starts with modeling that confession, right? In the home. Right. And we talked about that before in previous episodes about asking kids for forgiveness. And that's essential. I guess also it would be modeling the reception, like providing forgiveness to someone, responding in a way that's not turning them away from sharing with you. But I'm curious, Pennington or Shaw, either of you, how have you drawn that out of kids? Do you do it on like a regular basis where you say, hey, is there anything that you've seen lately that's kind of, so this is what I've said, and maybe there's a better way to say this, but like I was at my kid's bedside the other night, and I just said, hey, is there anything that you've seen recently or heard that's been troubling to you, or you have questions about, or you need to talk about? Kind of a pretty open-ended question, but trying to give them something, an opportunity if their conscience is firing and they're wanting to talk with dad about that. I don't want to imply that, yeah, tell me about your sin, assuming that they're doing that, and yet create that openness. Do you do that on a regular basis? And if so, what do you ask?
Yeah, I can just mention I try to have regular patterns with my kids. So I try to go on walks on certain days of the week with them or do other things. It's not always a walk, but like Monday is one child, Wednesday is another, Friday is another. And those are often when those kinds of conversations happen. And I find kids do best, along with most people, when you're not staring at them directly in the face. Mm-hmm. So we just go on a walk with our dog or whatever. And I just talk to them about all kinds of things that come up. And often part of that conversation is just like, what was going on yesterday? You were really down or really quiet or really whatever. Like, are you hurting about something? Did something happen wrong that you're embarrassed about? Like, so we just pretty openly talk regularly. And I think that kind of open talk can be really helpful. And I found that when I'm open like that with them regularly, and it's not like a huge event, then they're usually pretty free to be open with me. And I'm sure as they get older, that will change. That will be harder. But at least right now at their stage, that seems to be a really helpful thing, is just to continually be talking to them and bring up things I notice about their mood, about their quietness, about their anger. Like, why did you respond that way? Is something else going on? You know, can I help you with something? Do you feel stuck somewhere? You know, those kinds of questions seem to help.
Those are good.
That's really good. Kris, moving on to your second point, you do talk about the heart. You say safeguard against your own heart. And you mentioned Matthew 15, 18, and 19, where Jesus says, "But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart and defiles a person. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander." And you give a sample of 4 dangers we should safeguard against when it comes to our heart. So time/energy/focus drain. Number 2, pornography. Number 3, selfishness /self-promotion. And then 4, normalizing sin through entertainment. So if we can briefly touch on each of those, how do we safeguard our children and then our own hearts when it comes to those 4 different temptations?
Yeah, I think just trying to get some general categories there. There's obviously a lot more with technology, but a lot of times it's time, or it's things that you're looking at that you shouldn't, or it's just being selfish or promoting yourself. You know, every kid today wanting to be a YouTube star.
Yeah.
You can filter under that. Or normalizing sin. And I think a lot of times we're guilty of that as adults. How many of us know moms and dads who watch all kinds of stuff that they would never do, but it's just like, it's just a movie, it's just whatever. And it's very easy then to normalize that sin. So I think there are a lot of different tactics you could take. I made a few suggestions, like to set up some basic parent filters and controls, to create some boundaries even around your time, like plan your use of technology. Here's when we use it, here's when we don't. Everyone does something different. Like for us, we have like one night a week where we watch something together on Fridays. On Saturday, we play video games for an hour. Like we have very intentional times where we let them, be entertained, and other times where we don't. And so just making a plan, whatever that happens to be, you may be a lot more than that or less than that. And then thirdly, to evaluate entertainment. So that's both beforehand, observing it, seeing what will be included here. And then even just objectively talking to your kids about what you're seeing. Like, why do you think they responded that way? And like being willing to pause stuff. And I know we'll get a lot of eye rolls and dads, but I do think it's important to say, like, why do you think they responded that way? Like, what do you think their view of God was then? Why did they respond in anger or fear or those kinds of things? And just helping them process what they're seeing. We get the opportunity to help our kids actually live life and to help them view life through the Bible. But the opportunity doesn't mean we take it. And so the encouragement and that last one of like really evaluating entertainment, especially afterwards, after you're watching it, while you're watching something or being entertained by something, like you have a chance to shape the way they're viewing that and interpreting it and seeing it. And hopefully that can be a real kind of boost to us as dads, that like God's given you that, and you can actually help your kids take the Bible and apply it to actual life that you're experiencing together.
Those are awesome. Any thoughts specifically on the area of the selfishness or self-promotion? Maybe that's not one that our kids deal with as much, maybe more teenagers, but it could be kids. What do you think?
I think a lot of it is like it's easy to let our kids fall into kind of the normal patterns they see. So like my kids the other day were like holding up the iPad and saying like, welcome to my YouTube channel, and like, and talking in that kind of way, and, or like taking videos of themselves all the time, or constantly looking at pictures of themselves. So I think especially when they're younger, there could be ways to accidentally kind of trigger that selfishness to where they view technology primarily as a way to magnify who they are and what they look like. And it's easy to let our kids just scroll pictures forever of themselves. But that feeds that idea that technology is about me. So I think it's a lot of like what to avoid with technology, especially when they're younger. Maybe you'll have to be more active with them instead of just letting the pictures do the parenting. But I think it can be really helpful to just guard how they're thinking about it, how they're talking about it. And so to say, hey, let's not just take videos of ourselves. Let's think through, let's do something together, or, whatever. Just try to redirect those kinds of patterns you see in them.
Right. Yeah, I know my kids love looking at pictures of themselves on my phone.
Yeah.
I bring back old photos from my childhood, and very quickly the kids are just like, well, can we see us? Where are we in this? It's interesting. Just yesterday, I took my youngest boy out for his golden birthday. We take our kids out for like a little ice cream and building Lego set on each of their birthdays. And so sitting there at Yogurtland, and we're building this Lego set, just having a fun time together. And I see this mom and daughter walk in, and they get the ice cream, they sit down, and immediately the mom pulls out her phone and starts taking pictures of this setting. Got my ice cream here, here's my daughter, here's myself. And the girl followed suit. This young girl pulled out her phone and did the same as the mom walked out. They literally stayed there for about 30 seconds to a minute, got the kind of the experience, the photo, and then just proceeded to walk out. And she's like, come on, let's go. And the girl was still stuck there trying to get a good picture. To, again, I don't know, promote herself. I don't want to judge, but the point is that we are examples. And when our kids see us full of ourselves, in promoting ourselves, even within social media. Yes, they may not even be on social media yet, but that's they're watching us as because they want to follow and emulate, and so that's where it starts. This whole episode, in a lot of ways, is talking about how to parent our kids with technology, but the reality is, and we all know that with all these principles, we should be thinking about ourselves and how they apply here. And so let's talk a little bit more about that with this last principle that you bring out, which is the point that you make is rule tech prayerfully and purposely. In other words, don't let it rule you. So tech today has mastered what you call the nudge. Every app defaults to sending you notifications. Every streaming service autoplays the next episode. And the scroll of social media is infinite. If we're not careful, we'll find ourselves ruled by our tech rather than the other way around. You quote the Apostle Paul, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything. So how do we rule tech in our own lives and instead of being ruled by it? What are some practical ways you have put tech in its proper place in the Pennington home?
Yeah, well, I think in many ways going back over this article was a reminder that I need to redo that. It's not a one-time thing. You really have to be vigilant.
Yeah.
And I want to underscore that word prayerfully. I don't expand on it a lot in the article, but I do think that it's really important to be prayerful in this. We all tend to default to either what we grew up in or what our wives grew up in. Yeah. And it's possible that neither of those are fully biblical. In fact, it's very probable. And so what we need to do is to say, okay, what does God want for our home with our particular kids and our particular age, and be prayerful about that. So I really would encourage guys to pray, to talk to God about technology in their homes. And then the purposefulness kind of goes back to that intentionality streak. And there is a book that I've actually done a review on before by Andy Crouch called The Tech Wise Family. That's been a huge help there. It's very, very detailed and kind of how to do this. But I think most of these ideas that I have come from him and have kind of been implemented from him. Like we schedule times for entertainment. I mentioned that already. Our kids, we watch one show together on Friday nights. The kids watch one thing Sunday afternoon when they eat. and that's it. Like we don't do other technology now, or like other entertainment. I know a lot of other families who do way more than that, and I'm not trying to judge that. Most of that came down to one particular child of ours who really struggles when she sees a lot of movies and stuff like that. It just really messes her attitude up and a lot of other things. And so we've kind of shaped the home around kind of the one with the least tolerance. And then we play video games together on Saturday night for an hour, Mario Kart. And so far I can still beat all the kids, but one day I'm sure that will change. So I'm going to enjoy it while I have it. So that's one thing that we found. I'd really encourage, especially parents, to like wake up before your phones and go to bed after them. By that, I mean, don't have your phone in bed. I leave my phone in my office every night, and that not only dramatically helps my sleep, but it's easy to waste a whole hour a day on your phone. If you add 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night, a whole hour of whatever, how many 12, 13, 14 hours, whatever you're getting every night or every day is spent just scrolling or looking at stuff. And so that's been a huge, huge benefit to me to be purposeful when I pick it up. Like I try to go without tech certain times. And I know like I enjoy tech, obviously. Like a lot of what I do is around technology, but that can be everything from just like keeping do not disturb on to having deep focus sessions for 4 hours where I do not look at my phone, to putting my phone in another room, to going on a camping trip, to those kinds of things where you can kind of test like how much am I tied to this. One real good hint I found is like when I constantly open my phone and I go to the same app, I shut it down and then I immediately open up the same app. That tells me like, okay, I'm clearly like not thoughtful in what I'm doing. And if you find yourself doing that, like that's a signal to you, like you're thoughtless in what you're doing. And then like establish some no tech times in your home. So whether that's meal times, which is something I need to get into because that's not a current pattern, or just specific times. So like we'll have actually based on Andy Crouch's book, we have like a tea party time on Sunday afternoon, which is not really tea party. That's just what we call it. It's basically just like we sit and eat crackers and cheese and sandwiches and drink tea and talk. And like that's a time without technology. So those are the kinds of things that we can be purposeful about. Those are some of the things we've done with our kids, and to try to kind of shape when we use it, how we use it. And a lot of that comes down to, at this stage, more us modeling it because they don't currently have iPads or things like that they have ready access to. And when we give them things for school in particular, they happen to be homeschooled, so they have to use technology for those. We have set times and those kinds of things. But those are a few examples of kind of what we've done. But I encourage you to look at Andy Crouch's book for a lot more detail. And he has older kids too, so that kind of, I think, will continue to be a good resource for me as my kids continue to age.
That's good. Christopher, you want to jump in, talk about your family?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to say that, we've done similar things. And after listening to, what Kris just said, it's not much to add, but there's ways that we just, I don't know if it's purposeful. It's just we haven't gone after certain technologies. So for us, it's like video games is not really a part of our family. Like our video game console is a Super NES that the kids play like once in a blue moon.
Which was awesome, by the way.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
Back in the
NBA
day.
Jam is pretty amazing. I could play it for hours, but it's just not the same level of addictive as a lot of other things out there are. So it sounds like our kids probably watch more TV and shows than Pennington's, but I think just you don't always have to be on the cutting edge of anything. And certainly our kids don't have phones, and we're thankful for that.
Just being purposeful, though. If it's kind of the default, like Pennington was saying, not just for yourself when you pull out your phone, but if it's like, okay, there's a moment here, we're in the middle of summer, right? And so we don't have anything going on, and just the TV just gets turned on. There was a point in our family's life when we did not have a TV that was up in the living room, and so
You're talking about you as a parent, or when you were a kid?
No, sorry, in our family.
Okay.
Here in the last couple of years, we've actually gotten one of those frame TVs, and so I thought, oh, this would be really cool and heck in a foot. But there's comes disadvantages with that. Now we have a TV up there on the wall, and so in past we had it in our master closet, and so we'd have to pull it out every time that we wanted to watch something. And believe it or not, we watched things very infrequently, and it was great. Younger years there in our family's life. And so making it just challenging, a little bit of like some hurdles to be able to get to technology, I think is helpful. And yeah, just being purposeful.
We've moved ours from the living room down to the basement, and that's been a big help in that way. And we, there is exceptions for what we do. Like if we have friends, who have kids who come over, sometimes we'll say like, hey, why don't you guys go watch something for a little bit to give us a chance to talk to the parents or those kinds of things. But a lot of it's just like micro little decisions. It's a shame that a lot of times when we're watching our kids and we're taking videos of them, we're looking at the screen instead of the kid.
Yeah.
And so like, I'll just hold the phone to my chest and watch the kid. And I'm like, the video may not be the most perfect framing, but I don't care. Like I'd rather see it with my own eyes. So it's just all those kinds of micro decisions that we can be thoughtless in. And I'm as guilty as anyone. So this is a collective reminder for us to say like, let's control our technology and not let it control us.
Yeah.
Amen. Kris, your final point is use technology for good. So talk with us about some of the different ways we can use tech for good.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that, it may sound like we're down on tech, and I hope that isn't how it comes across. I think it's more like the one overarching word I hope people hear is just intentionality or purposefulness. But there's a lot of ways that God uses tech for good. Christians have historically been first to use technology. The radio, whatever, printing press, like it's Christians who have really taken those and said like, how could we use this for the gospel? And we've got unprecedented connection to literally the world from our phones and computers. And so use technology to share the gospel, whether that's like your friends, your kids developing a close friendship with somebody who may not even be locally, but right where you're at. Maybe it's a cousin or a friend that you used to live next to, and they use that to say, let me FaceTime them and talk to them and try to keep that relationship going and maybe be able to share the gospel with that person who doesn't know the Lord. Whether that's using technology to connect with missionaries or send them little video notes, or there's all kinds of ways that we now have readily available. Of course, just bringing people together with technology. We don't live near either of our parents. So FaceTiming like relatives is really important for us, and spending time regularly on video calls with them, playing games together. Like we've done things where we do crafts together over FaceTime and things like that. So technology can really bring you together in special ways. It can also connect you to people in your church family. Now, I have the advantage of being able to code and stuff like that, but we like to make like fun little things for others. So as an example, my daughter got really into making like fake little books with her friends, and they wanted to make a little library. So I made them a special app where they could like check books in and out, and they would come over once a week and like run this little library app and scan people's barcodes and type stuff in and all this kind of stuff. And so just trying to find ways to make it fun and enjoyable and like things that bring people together. And now with all the AI coding stuff, a lot of people could do that kind of basic app. So you should try it. And then like to use technology to serve people. So instead of just self-promotion or image building, trying to brainstorm together as a family of like, how could we use what we have to care for other people in our church, to care for other people around the globe. Again, I think this really is technology is a way to connect us more than ever to the mission field. But a lot of times we don't think about technology in that way. So whether that's just sharing, or connecting with missionaries and watching their, video reviews of what they've been up to, or reading through their letters together and then writing them an email as a family, or like I said, sending them a video note of encouragement. These are the kinds of things that technology now opens for us, but we're not always intentional in taking advantage of them.
Yeah, one of my wife's best friends is a missionary in Papua New Guinea, and they're actually in the bush. It is very remote. But thanks to Starlink, thank you, Elon Musk, they have internet, which is crazy. And my wife can actually FaceTime her friend from time to time, and the kids know each other because they spent like 6 weeks at our house one time on a furlough, and they can FaceTime each other, which is crazy. They don't have... There's lots of foods they can't get access to, and their water and things like that and their power is not always reliable, but they've got internet and they can actually FaceTime each other. Wow. And that's such a cool connection to the mission field that was never an option before.
That's awesome. One other thing that your comments made me think of was the idea of using technology for good. Goes beyond just consuming to creating. And so I was thinking about, instead of your child an iPad and having them kind of seclude away and just watch something or listen to something. I remember recently my boys had a friend over and they were using a device they were doing stop motion animation, I think, or making a movie. And yes, that's the use of technology, but it's like with community, they're with their friends. And I think that's a neat thing to help our kids see technology as a tool that can be used to create. And I think it's astounding what we have, and I think it's a great gift, and we should utilize it well, like you said, for good. As we at the end of your article, Pennington, you tell the story of an older fish who swam by two young fish, and he called out, "How's the water, boys?" And the fish look at each other and then replied, "What's water?" And in your words, technology is so ubiquitous, it's easy to not notice the gentle current taking us downstream. Currents are only noticeable if you push against them, and technology is the exact same. As we come to the end of our episode, you might be like me, watching your kids get older and realizing that I can't keep up with the rapidly changing landscape of technology, but I desperately want to craft a plan for the time for the use of technology in my home. So let's just go back through a few points from the episode here to remind us, kind of a call to action here. What are we supposed to do with this? First of all, create a home full of confession and forgiveness. So be quick to confess sin yourself, respond with gospel grace when you're sinned against, reward, encourage confession and forgiveness in your kids. Secondly, safeguard against your own heart. Make a list of the dangers that technology presents, and then pray with your wife about how to safeguard against these dangers for you and your kids. Thirdly, rule tech prayerfully and purposefully. So if you find yourself being controlled by technology or anything other than God's Holy Spirit, right? Then pray and then plan. Be intentional about when and how and where you and your kids will use technology. Schedule time for entertainment. Fridays as a family, like Pennington mentioned. Go to bed without phones. Establish no tech times. And then finally, use technology for good. Gospel outreach, connecting with family and friends, serving others instead of serving self through self-promotion, etc. And then also, call to action here would be perhaps pick up that book, Tech-Wise Family by Andy Crouch. Pennington mentioned that. We're going to leave a link in the description to the review that Pennington wrote on the book. I think that was back in, what do you say, back in 2020 or 2022?
It's been a while.
Yeah. And so it's a great read, both philosophically and biblically, and then really practical as well. Okay, Pennington, thanks for your time here. Thanks for being with us. Is there anything that you want to leave with parents? A final comment here about technology. And then if you could follow that up with just a short lesson from your dad. We share this at the end of our episode. So what's something you would like to share?
Yeah, I think as far as technology, my one encouragement may sound like a discouraging thing at first. And that is that it used to be that you could just throw an internet filter on and call it a day and feel good about yourself because it was so hard to get the dial up going anyhow. People had to use the phones, Well, we've long since passed that. And I think that can be a discouraging thing, that we have to be so active. But on the other hand, you get the opportunity to guide your kids through this world, and so much of this world is governed by technology. I remember there was a time right as people were getting smartphones. I happened to be at a place where we were trying to figure out how to help college guys deal with the internet. And it used to be that we could just throw an internet filter on. And I was saying, hey, I read this article, and it seems like by 2014, everyone's going to have smartphones. And it was astounding to us that could ever be the case. Mm-hmm. But I said, we got to change how we address this. Right now, all we're doing is basically preventing them from accessing stuff they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. We're not really helping them actually figure out how to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And we've got to do that now because they're going to have access on their own. And I think as parents, it can kind of be like, oh no, what are we going to do? We can't just stop them anymore. But you've got the opportunity now to help your kids work through this in real time in life. And so the encouragement would just be to say let me take up that and take it on my shoulders and be a source for real direction in my kids' life and teach them and train them how to do this. So that would be one encouragement, is to take this on as a man and to help your kids learn how to govern technology well. As far as lessons from my dad, I think probably this is a very simple one, but my dad used to want to talk to me a lot, and it was hard to get me to be open and responsive. I mentioned earlier that I walk with my kids and talk with them. That comes in part from my dad. He used to cut my hair when he wanted to talk to me because he knew I did better not looking at him, and I was captive. And sometimes I get like 3 haircuts in a week, but it just, whatever it took to kind of get me to sit, to talk in a way that was comfortable for me. And for me, I found that with my kids, walking next to them provides that same thing. And plus I don't have to cut their hair. But I think that little, like subtle, like condescension to me as a little kid was really helpful. It opened me up and allowed me to talk to him freely. And for him to find that and then identify that and use that regularly was a real grace when I look back.
Well, why don't we close with a word of prayer, shall we? Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this conversation that we've been able to have. I know it's been challenging, convicting for me. There's things that I need to be more intentional about in terms of technology in our home, and I pray for all of our listeners that they would respond in the same way, help us to actually go and put some of these principles in practice that we've heard about today. Lord, I pray that our hearts would be shaped primarily by your word and not by the world around us that speaks so loud through all the tech in our lives, including our phones. Help us to love you with all of our hearts, and I pray that our children grow up to love you as well. I pray that they would be active servants of you in the world and not just passive partakers of the entertainment culture that's all around them. Lord, we have so many prayers for them, but we just pray more importantly that they would come to know you and follow you. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Next week, we're going to follow this up with an episode featuring one of Christopher's articles. Christopher, you want to talk about that? Sure.
I wrote an article called Protecting, I think it was Children and Teens Online. Mm-hmm. And basically what that grew out of was me as a youth pastor sitting down to write a Growing Fathers article and saying, I want to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. What's something that I really need to dig into to be able to help my youth group? And realizing at some point, a couple of years into youth ministry, that almost all of the issues that I was dealing with and that were coming up in terms of my teens had to do with technology in one way or another. And so, I really need to dig into how to help parents in this area. So it's a little bit more practical, nuts and bolts. It gets into some of the issues of filtering and some of the different services that are out there to help with that, whether it's Bark or Covenant Eyes and whatnot. But we also talk about discipling kids and the importance of that. It's something that I've used as a seminar actually here at our church. And so as John and I were talking, we thought it'd be a good follow-up to this week's discussion from Kris's article.
Looking forward to that. Hey, I have a request here at the end. If you have like 15 seconds after this episode, I think you can do it in that time. And if you're not driving, and if you enjoyed this podcast, can you help us by support us by simply giving us a rating on our podcast app, any podcast app that you are using? Don't rate us if you don't like it, but that would be great if you could do that for us. Also, if you would subscribe to our channel on YouTube, that would be great. We'd love to hear from you. As always, email us at podcast@growingfathers.com. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Kris, for joining us. I hope you all have a great week.